Welcome back. With us right now is Director Fred Ajarian of the El Toro Water District.
Morning, Ken. How are you?
How are you?
Good to
I'm
see you
doing
again.
good. Always good to see you, sir.
Likewise.
And we're going to be talking about the overall picture of California's aging water project.
Yes.
And,
yes.
you know, we hear about this all the time.
Yes.
A good example that you and I have talked about, and we'll get to that slide, is, oh, there it is right there behind me,
Right.
is the Lake Oroville spillway, the way it failed. You know, remarkably though, as we talked about,
Right.
how quickly they repaired this.
Yes.
I mean, it was really remarkable.
Now, it was this structure, which was built in the 60s, it failed earlier this year in early February,
Yeah.
and so we saw pictures like what you see here on the screen.
Yeah.
And, after they were able to stabilize the spillway and get things under control, the state embarked on a multi-million-dollar repair program. So I'm pleased to tell everyone that this main spillway that you see here in the picture from February has now been restored, fully restored, and it's functional as of November 1st. But the price tag is going to be upwards of $1 billion by
Wow.
the time they are finished with not only the repairs to this main spillway, but also to the emergency spillway up at the upper top.
Right. I remember you telling us about that.
Of that.
Yeah.
And as part of this program, this sort of triggered a statewide evaluation, kind of a wake-up call, if you will, of other dams in the system and just kind of a reassessment of the state's aging state water project. So for the other dams in the state, there are about 1,250 dams statewide.
Wow.
93 have been identified that have spillways comparable in structure and design to Oroville. So those are all going to be reevaluated in terms of the condition and also updated with regards to their emergency evacuation plans and their flood plans. As you recall, the folks downstream in the city of Oroville, over 200,000 people had to be evacuated immediately when this event happened. So lessons learned, the state now going forward is going to require these emergency evacuation plans and flood inundation plans for not only these 93 spillways, but for structures for other dams around the state.
Okay.
So, but what I'd like to do is...
that's amazing.
What I'd like to do is kind of segue from this, since this is sort of the crown jewel of the state water project, into kind of just an overview of the state system. Okay. And how it's aging, kind of like me, and not aging as well as fine wine, I might add.
Well, you know, again, a lot of the stuff was constructed, it's hard to believe, but, you know, we're going on 50 years or more now.
Yes, yes. It was, a lot of it was done. Those customers will recall that Governor Pat Brown, Jerry Brown's father, was the architect of getting this state project through the legislature. And as we'll talk here in just a second, it was a very expensive but a very necessary project. Yeah. So getting to the state water project here, as a result of the Oroville spillway incident, we're looking at upgrading infrastructure along the California aqueduct, the many levees and systems that make up the state system. The state system itself is over 700 miles worth of canals, aqueducts, and levees, of which the California aqueduct, that's the one that people see as they drive up the 5 freeway, is a major component. There's also something called California Water Fix. That's a $17 billion proposal to improve flows through the Delta. We'll talk about that in a second. And also just ensuring system redundancies to enhance the overall operating efficiency of the state water project. And that's primarily being triggered by climate change. Okay. This past year, we saw bountiful rain. It's an indication that California is going to be facing, and the rest of the country will be facing, more of the variations in the climate that scientists have been predicting for some time. So learning to operate or reoperate the state system to more effectively to meet its obligations of flood control and water supply, but also to make sure that Mother Nature doesn't overwhelm the system as it almost did with Lake Oroville. So maybe go on to the next slide.
Yeah, the
here.
next slide is a map, and we can see the water project overall.
So the State Water Project is basically over 700 miles long, as I talked about. Lake Oroville up at the top that we've talked about in great detail this past year. The Banks pumping plant are right up in the delta near the confluence of the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers. The San Luis Reservoir, which is more of a regulating reservoir, it just takes the water in, and it fluctuates as the needs are in need of. The Edmonston pumping plant, which is at the bottom of the Tehachapi Mountains, at the bottom of the Grapevine. You always see that as you go up and over the 5 freeway. Then you have the Castaic Lake, which is at the west branch. There, the State Water Project splits into 2 branches. There's an east branch and a west branch. The west branch is that short little stub that sticks out. So Castaic Lake, great place for fishing and for contemplation and reflection. Another power plant, that's one of 5 power plants that are situated along this 700-mile long system. And then finally Lake Paris, which is the terminal storage facility in Riverside County. So all of these structures, along with the rest of the system, are part of this reevaluation or reoperation to improve overall efficiency and also ensure the integrity of the facilities too.
Now, next couple slides we're going to go through briefly here, just the history.
Right. So just real quickly, the concept for a statewide water project or state water project came forth in 1919. A gentleman, Lieutenant Marshall from the U.S. Geological Survey, conceived of the idea of running a system from the north end of the state, where most of our water supply is, through the Central Valley and to the south end of the state. And they came up with a plan in 1931 under Chief Engineer Edward Hyatt, and this brought forth a concept as to what this project might look like and what facilities might be needed.
Okay.
So turning to
the next slide,
right.
What I think people have heard many times, the Feather River Project.
Right. This was the big project that first started. This Feather River is up by the Oroville Dam area, and so Oroville Dam basically dammed up a part of the Feather River that now makes for Oroville Lake. The gentleman here that you see pictured, A.D. Edmonston, was the first director of the State Department of Water Resources. I was actually privileged to have his son, Bob Edmonston, as one of my board members up in Montecito, California. Very brilliant engineers. Everything was finalized in 1957 in something called the California Water Plan under Harvey Banks' tenure. And then on the right, you see a picture of Governor Brown as he's doing the ceremonial blast for the first removal or excavation of earth for the Feather River project that would be later known as the Oroville Dam project. And really, Governor Brown should be given a lot of credit, because this project almost didn't pass.
Yeah.
It only passed with less than 175,000 votes.
Wow.
So the funding, of course, can't build projects without money. So $1.75 billion were authorized in 1960 to construct this project. The project was finished in 1973, and we in Southern California started receiving first deliveries of that state project water in the mid-70s here. And I guess turning to the next slide
we got about a minute left, so we're going to go through this quickly.
So the aqueduct that you see is having, among many challenges, some subsidence issues. We have some pictures that will show of the aqueduct, showing examples of that. We can go to the next slide here.
Okay.
Go ahead, next slide. So you see examples of the subsidence where it's basically dropped down a number of feet along the aqueduct, and that's because of the ground pumping of groundwater all along the Central Valley. In fact, the slide on the left shows how many feet from 1925 to 1977 the land was at where the 1925 mark was at. Now it's down to where it says 1977. Amazing. That's subsidence. So it's having an effect on the aqueduct and some of the other facilities, the levees. See the damage here. And
that's amazing that the ground has come down that much.
That far, just because we've always had bountiful amounts of groundwater, but we're going to have, through a new piece of legislation, we're going to have to manage our groundwater demands more effectively, and supposedly we'll be doing that by 2040, probably long after I'm around. And so, lastly, this final slide. The state is doing a number of other activities, refurbishing levees. They've committed over $4 billion to fund these levee improvements. And finally, the state is also investing in long-term upgrades in the operation of the system.
Which is something we need.
Which is something we need so that we can continue to get water through this vital lifeline. And so if anybody, when our customers hear about the State Water Project, that's the heart of California's important water supply. So vote for those bonds when they come by, because our life depends on it here and statewide, not just in Southern California.
Fred, thank you very much. We're out of time.
Pleasure.
Always good to see you.
Likewise,
We'll
Ken.
see you in a couple of months.
I look forward to it. Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll be right back.